Okay, speech. All right. I'm a little bit nervous. It's probably because of the anxiety I get when I do stuff kind of like this, which is kind of convenient because that's exactly what my speech is about today. You know, the butterflies in your stomach, the numbness in your arms and legs. That's anxiety. So today I'm going to be talking about different ways that help reduce anxiety, which include some social, psychological applications, modifying your behavior about it, and just overall preparedness. Now, this semester, in addition to taking this class, I also took a social psychology class. And the reason I took those two classes is because they both deal with like social interactions. So I figured maybe there's something I can learn in one class that I'll learn in the other one. And sure enough, it did kind of help. In my social psych class, I learned about a study conducted by Kenneth Savitsky and Thomas Gilovich, which was a study on rating people's nervousness. Now, the way the study worked was that people would rate how nervous they feel before giving a speech or doing some sort of oral presentation. And once they gave it, the audience would then rate how nervous that person felt. So they rate themselves, and then the audience would rate them. And what they found is that the person would often rate themselves on a higher nervousness level than the audience would rate them. And what this means is that people aren't as adept on picking up on nervous cues as you would believe. Like if you stumble or you mess up on a word, odds are the audience won't pick up on that. So that kind of helps in a way, like you don't, I guess, overthink it or think like, oh, I messed up. Everyone totally saw that, when in reality they kind of didn't, or usually they don't. Keeping with this like idea of sort of using psychology, my second point about modifying behavior. Usually when we first get news that we have to do something that might be anxiety-provoking, we usually think about it in a negative way, like, oh man, I have to give a speech, or oh, there's an upcoming test. Like, dang, you know, you usually respond negatively to that. And when you respond to something negatively, like you have a bad attitude about it, typically that follows in a bad behavior. And with that, you know, you kind of feel like less confident. You try putting it off as much as you can, which leads to unpreparedness. A little bit on that later. So when you already don't want to do it, you have like that bad view. You just don't want to do it, and that kind of creates an anxious feeling because you don't like it. But if you kind of change your attitude about it, maybe you think, hey, this may not be that bad, or I think I can totally do this, right? You feel more confident, more self-assured, and anxiety will just naturally go down if you feel more confident about it. Now for my last point, approximately 1 in 6, my last point, which regards overall preparedness on this subject matter. Approximately 1 in 6 college students have been diagnosed with or treated for some sort of anxiety, according to the Penn State Medical Health Center. The reason I use college students as an example of anxiety is that, you know, we typically have a lot on our plate, a lot of classes, a lot of things to do, jobs, work. With all that, requires pretty precise time management skills. And if you kind of fail to do that, you can become behind. You're not as prepared for things as you'd like to be. And of course, kind of like with attitude, being unprepared lowers your confidence, which again brings anxiety. A reason why I picked to do this prepared speech as opposed to the impromptu is I kind of need that preparedness. If I only have 5 minutes to get something done, I don't think I would be adequately prepared, and I'd kind of be nervous about it. I know I'll eventually have to do impromptu, but I'll get to that when I get to it. So overall, with anxiety can be reduced by using some social psych, changing your attitude, and just being prepared overall. Maybe doing some of these things can help you in the future. I don't know, maybe.
Okay, Eddie, you know, the self-disclosure example that you used at the beginning would probably work a little bit better if it was maybe even more exaggerated, because it seems like you're kind of just diving into the topic instead of actually doing an attention device. I recognize that that's what it was, but it doesn't need, it needs to be a little bit more distinctive. I like the idea, I'm just not sure that the execution was as smooth as you would like it to be. You had a pretty clear statement of what your goal is. It's a broad goal, but it was well stated. There is a preview of what the structure is going to be for the most part. I thought the content is pretty solid. You've got some research that you presented, some explanations that you provide. I like the research that you've done. There's probably room to add a few more things into the presentation, and you certainly have some time that you could pump it up with, but what was there was choice. So I think you're doing okay there. Visual factors on the presentation. Your body movement, you're not pacing exactly, but you are kind of shifting your feet a little bit, and sometimes you're crossing your legs as you're shifting your feet, and that looks a little bit awkward. There are a couple of times when it looks like you're kind of standing sideways. You'll probably notice that in the last minute of your speech when you watch it. Excuse me. So that's a little bit awkward. The gestures, there are some small indicators. You aren't really being super expansive, but you don't look like you are paralyzed or anything like that, so maybe a little bit more, but it was not unnatural. You were doing okay there. Same thing with your facial expressions. I think you're reasonably animated. Your eye contact, it's kind of interesting because you do look up quite a bit, but you're not really looking at the audience. You're kind of looking in the direction of the audience. I may have mentioned this to somebody else the other day. It sort of looks like you're speaking to people's desks. You know, you're looking right in front of them instead of looking them in the eye, and I think that you want to be more conscious of that and engaging. And you know, and when you talk about anxiety issues, for instance, there's another one of those things that you could talk about and use as an example, you know, where people might have some hesitation or anxiety about doing those kinds of things. Your voice, I think, it projects very nicely. I think there's really good inflection when you're speaking. I like the kind of character voice that you do a couple of times to, you know, indicate, you know, like it's a second person that you are portraying there, and that comes across pretty clearly. Sometimes the pacing is a little bit off. There are places where there's some hesitation and it doesn't move as well as it could. I thought you had a very nice transition between the opening part of the speech and the first section that you're talking about. I made a note of it. I wish I could remember what the exact phrasing was, but I thought that was pretty solid. Okay? All right. Thank you.